Alright, this is a video about the NFL playoffs. We're going to start off with the 49ers and the Seahawks. So, according to sportingnews.com, we have the 49ers as 9.5 point favorites at home. This game will feature actually a rematch of division rivals. So these guys have played twice. The regular season results, the 49ers won the early matchup 27-7 and also won the subsequent matchup in Seattle 21-13. We're seeing two quarterbacks have their first NFL playoff start, Geno Smith and Brock Purdy. Of course, Brock Purdy, the rookie, the so-called Mr. Irrelevant, the last overall pick in the draft, has taken over for the 49ers and kind of kept the ship afloat there. So yeah, my thoughts on this game. The second game was a little bit closer. That was with Brock Purdy, but that was in Seattle. It was 21-3. The Seahawks at least got it to be a little bit closer. Actually, the Seahawks have actually faced all three of these quarterbacks because the first game was the game Trey Lance got injured, so they saw Garoppolo, Lance, and Brock Purdy. San Francisco is a heavy favorite. If Seattle wants to win this game, I think what they have to hope for is that they get some rookie playoff mistakes from Brock Purdy, which wouldn't be totally unexpected. A lot of good quarterbacks that even rookie quarterbacks that are having a really good season their first year do have playoff games that aren't memorable. Certainly, I remember Ben Roethlisberger 13-0 as a starter during the regular season, his rookie year with a solid team around him. Probably the most comparable situation to Brock Purdy that I can think of. Went into the playoffs, did win his first playoff game, but didn't play well, and that was a divisional round game when they had to bye, and then the conference championship also didn't play well and they lost, but he made up for it the next year and they won the Super Bowl. But yeah, Purdy's been pretty much unflappable. It'll be interesting to see what he does in this game. Of note, weather conditions are going to be pretty nasty, so yeah, apparently a lot of rain is anticipated anyway. So that could definitely affect the play of both quarterbacks, so we'll see how that goes. The 49ers are probably more likely wanting to run. In fact, one thing the Seahawks, maybe their hope was to maybe get Brock Purdy to try to stop the run and make Brock Purdy throw it, even though he did pretty good against them last time. A playoff game, bigger stage. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, these rookie quarterbacks, I guess when they get into the playoffs, you're playing higher quality opponents, and the pressure is definitely amped up. The bad news there is the Seahawks, as far as their defense against the run, they're ranked 30th in yards per game. When I want to talk about stats for defenses, not offenses, I'm going to use yard per game, not total yards, because we do have two playoff teams that played one less game now with the Bengals and the Bills. So yeah, the 49ers are 8th running the ball. Of course, you got Christian McCaffrey there. The Seahawks are 30th in run defense for the regular season. One thing that may bode well for the Seahawks, they're ranked 11th in passing offense, while the 49ers are ranked 20th in passing defense. But then again, you throw in the rain and how effective Geno Smith can be. He did pretty good in the last game, 31 of 44, 238 yards and a touchdown. But overall, the offense did only score 13 points. So the 49ers are heavy favorites. Again, the story of San Francisco wins is probably just everything went as planned. The machine just ran as it should. If the Seahawks win, then I think it's going to be due to something like a Brock Purdy mistakes, or factor in the weather, or just an outstanding game by Geno Smith, or somehow, some way the Seahawks defense really steps up and does a much better job against the run. So we'll see what happens. That will be the first game of these playoffs. The next game in these playoffs, one of the more interesting ones I think, is the Los Angeles Chargers and Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they played each other in the regular season. Just to mention, the Jaguars are 2.5 point underdogs at home. The regular season results were much different. The Jaguars and the Chargers, in the regular season, Jaguars crushed them like 38-10. So I think that big news for that game was Justin Herbert didn't have his receivers, and he had rib injury, and it was also like a week 3 game, I believe. So yeah, I put the Jaguars at 2-1 and the Chargers at 1-2. So really, they're both different teams since then. Trevor Lawrence had a monster game against them. That'll be interesting. James Robinson ran for 100 yards. The Chargers, Justin Herbert, and 25 of 45, not a high completion percentage, 297 yards, but only a touchdown to pick, and wow, no running. And I mean no running. Wow, 29, 34 yards rushing, plus minus 8, that's 27 yards rushing. So the Jaguars, pretty dominant in that regular season game, but in this game now they're 2.5-point underdogs. I think a couple of factors I think that will really really help the Jaguars is, for one thing, the Jaguars' running game. It's ranked about 14th, kind of like middle of the pack, but the Chargers' run defense is 28th in the league. So it's pretty much near the bottom. So the Jaguars might be able to control the ball and run the ball. On the flip side, the Chargers do have the 3rd-ranked passing offense, while Jacksonville has a 28th-ranked passing defense. So that could definitely be a problem for them too. So there's two very wide gaps in ranking for offense and defense there. And another thing that could really impact the Chargers, of course, is the long trip across one coast to another. They're going from the west coast to the east coast. They're having a 6-hour flight, 3 hours of difference in the time zones, and they got the short week on top of that. So they play Saturday, the second game, so they'll have a long flight over from west coast to east coast. There's been all kinds of talk about that. As far as teams going from one coast to the other, how it's a disadvantage, and this one will be done on a short week. As far as that, these are both 2 young quarterbacks. You got Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. They're both playing in their first playoff game, so that's kind of evens it out as far as quarterbacks go. As far as like when you think about someone being nervous and making mistakes in their first playoff game, it kind of applies to them both. So I guess we'll see who handles the pressure better. And who knows? That might be what we're talking about in the difference of the game. Depending on who wins, Jaguars, Chargers, it might be what quarterback handle things better. Another story to the keys to victory could be some of the gambles that the Chargers do. They go on 4th down a lot. They just go through, live by these analytics. So to me, it seems like it costs them more than it helps them. So I would say if analytics and the way the Chargers do their thing, I'd say if anything, if a story comes out of that and we have a victory, it's probably going to be more likely that it's the Jaguars in that case. But who knows? The Chargers may just pass the ball over the field. They're going to get Bosa back. I don't know if they're going to get Williams back. That to me, from what I've heard, is still indeterminate. So they played all their starters in their last game where they didn't really need to play them and got some injuries. So that could also potentially be a story here too. Mainly if the Jaguars win. It seems like the Jaguars are pretty healthy, and this game is probably one of the more interesting games. It's at least projected to be anyway. So we'll see. Okay, the next game we're going to talk about is Buffalo, Miami. So I'm just going in chronological order. So the Bills and Dolphins. The line on that is also pretty high in Buffalo's favor. So the Bills are 13-point favorites. They are the biggest favorites of anyone this weekend. The Bills did split with the Dolphins during the regular season. The Dolphins won their early one in Miami 21-19, and the Bills won 32-29. So why the big point gap? That is because Tua is not going to play. So they have Skylar Thompson playing. So he's played in a couple games this season. He played in the win against the Jets where they barely pulled it off, essentially 11-6 to get into the playoffs. So, not much is expected of the Dolphins. For one thing, they were 8-3 at one point, and ended up finishing the season 9-8. They've been pretty much on a downward kick. And Buffalo, of course, they were one of the Super Bowl favorites. Of course, now they have Damar Hamlin that they're playing for. So, and they're at home for this game, so there's a lot to like in Buffalo. As far as like any notable stats, the Dolphins are at a real advantage for passing defense. The Bills rank 7th in passing offense, while the Dolphins are 27th in passing defense in yards per game. And other than that, as far as the passing game for the Dolphins, I mean, Skylar Thompson couldn't get really much going against the Jets. Now, Jets are a pretty good defense, so that's true, but he really couldn't get much going. There's not really much confidence in him. I think the story is if the Dolphins win, either they have like some outstanding day on defense, or Skylar Thompson like totally blows away expectations. And again, for the Bills, I think they just if they win, the storyline's just going to be could be a number of things really. It's more or less like the 49ers, just everything will go as it should. So. Yeah, the Dolphins are big underdogs in this game, despite 2 regular season games. I mean, one thing is familiarity. When you play a team 3 times, sometimes the records and such, they even say for division rivals, playing them twice, records and such just go out the window for a lot of these teams. But yeah, right now, the Bills very heavy favorites, the biggest favorites out of all these games. In fact, the 7th since their creation in 2020 have never won a playoff game, and there was only one competitive game, oddly enough, against the Bills when the Colts played them and lost 27-24. Of course, the Colts were an 11-5 team that grabbed the 7th seed. Other than that, the 7th seed records haven't been all that great. We're looking at 9-8, 9-7-1, and both teams this year are 9-8. So. The Colts were the only outlier. Every other 7th seed was blown off the field, but we'll see. It's up to Skylar to impress us, and up to that Dolphins team to rally around them, and we'll see what happens. Okay, the next game I'm going to focus on is the Ravens and the Bengals, and this is another high spread favorite. Bengals are up 9.5. The regular season, I had to go to footballdatabase.com, footballdb.com, which is showing the scores of the last 2 games. So the Bengals won the latest regular season game in 2017. Won the game early in the year 1917. I guess the story is maybe the most recent. They did this last week. The Ravens didn't have Lamar Jackson like they're likely to have him now, and the Bills, according to the ESPN article, Ravens yet to name a starting QB for the playoff game versus the Bengals. Lamar Jackson is out, so they're saying that, so they don't know if it's going to be Tyler Huntley or undrafted rookie Anthony Brown. So put him in the underdog category for sure. Yeah, the Ravens. As far as like any of their seasonal statistics, I don't know. I don't know what much you'd say with these quarterbacks out. The offensive statistics with Lamar out are probably irrelevant. One thing I could say is that as far as passing, that really seems to favor the Bengals, ranked 5th in yards per game versus the Ravens defense, which is ranked 26th, which is something to think about when you think about Baltimore. You think typically good defense. But yeah, I guess so. If the story is if the Bengals win, it's just like Joe Burrow in the clutch. He's been really good in the playoffs. Seems like definitely one of the top tier quarterbacks up there with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I think since he wins, it's just kind of like business as usual. If Baltimore wins, you either get like some outrageous performance by one of these whoever starts quarterback, or the defense really, really steps up and plays like a huge game. I think that could be a story. And of course, rivals. Again, another thing with the division rival where they're seeing each other for the 3rd time and they're familiar with each other. they've played each other quite a bit, so there is that level of familiarity, which seems to make divisional games a lot more close. So with Baltimore and Cincy, it's again playing quarterback for Baltimore, and that's really hurting them right now. So that's why Cincinnati is a heavy favorite, and they're at home. There was no coin toss to decide home field since they'd beaten the Ravens the previous week, and we'll see what happens with that one. Okay, the last game we're going to talk about is the New York Giants and the Minnesota Vikings. These guys played each other in the regular season and actually played a really competitive game. Now, the line does favor Minnesota by 3 points, which is kind of interesting. Since they're at home, it's almost like it's a toss-up. Usually they give you 3 points edge for being at home, so it's like otherwise if they played on a neutral site, it would be like even, like a push, like no favorite. And it ended up being a 3-point game. During the regular season, they made like a 61-yard field goal, the Vikings did, to win the game, essentially. So it was a really close game. And it's kind of interesting. It's been kind of like the Vikings' MO. If they win a game, it's close, and if they lose a game, they get totally destroyed, since they have essentially, I think, what are they, like 13-4, or yeah, I think 13-4 is the record, and they still have they've given up more points than they've scored, despite winning 9 more games. They won 9 more games than they've lost, and they still have a negative point differential. So that's a lot of people are calling them ponies and everything like that. So I'm not going to go that far, but this should be an interesting game since it was so close before. As far as like rankings go, I think one thing that hurts the Vikings, the Giants are 4th in rushing, while they're yards per game, while the Vikings are 20th in yards allowed. Rushing yards last time the Giants got 126. So overall 445 yards of offense, but even the Vikings had 353. So it was pretty close. Saquon had about 84 yards, 6 yards a carry though on 14 carries, and Daniel Jones also had 4 carries for 34 yards. So it'll be interesting. So yeah, another one. This is going to be Daniel Jones's first playoff game. So he's going to start there. Kirk Cousins has a couple of playoff starts. But yeah, this is. I think this one's going to really be a toss-up. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either way how this game comes out. The only other weakness I could see is the Giants are ranked 27th in rush defense, but in yards per game, but the Vikings are 27th in rushing offense. So they can't run, and the Giants can't stop the run. So yeah, that looks like that's kind of a push there. So yeah, this game I think is just. And no matter what the outcome of this game would not surprise me. I think some of these games there could be some outcomes that would totally surprise me. But with this one, I've got no gut feeling. I don't even know if there's a story of the game, depending on who wins. I mean, the Giants, Dave Bolts have been a great coach, and he's, I think, got everything out of this team that he possibly can. If they win, it's just a great story for them in general. Yeah, the Vikings, certainly they can do it, I think. I mean, they are a very good football team. I don't think they're frauds like everybody's saying. I don't think you win that many games with being a fraud, but I think this is just a tough matchup for them. It was a very competitive game, and we'll see what happens. This one is just really, really a toss-up. There's all the other ones that some of them are competitive, but I think out of this one, this is the most coin flip game that you're going to see. So we'll see which way the coin lands when this one's over. Okay, so the last game I'm going to talk about is the Dallas Cowboys versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They played each other very early in the regular season, week 1 as a matter of fact. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won 19-3, but I don't know that you can put a lot of stock in week 1 of the regular season. So many things changed since then. One good news for the Bucs in that game was they were actually able to run the ball. Leonard Fournette, 127 yards on 21 carries, 6 yards a carry. Since then, the Buccaneers have gone to 32nd in rushing offense in yards per game. The 2.5-point road favorites, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just to note, they are the only team to be in the playoffs this season with actually a losing record. They are 8-9, and the reason why they got in and got to host the playoff game was because they won their division. Everyone else in the division also had a losing record, and somebody has to win a division no matter what. So at 8-9, they were able to have the best record, at least in their division, out of the 4 teams, and that granted them a playoff spot. Certainly, the story behind this game will be one thing will be grass, the grass field. The Cowboys ex-coach on NBC brought up the fact that they don't play that well on grass. In fact, I think the record on grass is 1-4. So it's almost like they used to talk about the Rams back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that they were the greatest show on turf, and the only way to beat them is to kind of like get them on grass. And they're not as quick and all that. And that's what they're saying about the Cowboys, that they just rely on team speed, and if you put it on grass, that I guess neutralizes it enough to cause them to have a bad record. And they saw that in Washington. They played on grass against a team that wasn't really going anywhere and has a losing record, and they end up losing to them actually very badly. So yeah, the story of the game with the Bucs win might be the field. Literally, Raymond James Stadium might steal the show and be the talk of the town because the grass slowed the Cowboys down enough. Of course, another reason would be Tom Brady, of course, and maybe some late season dynamics there for the Bucs. The last game they really played that they had to win was against the Carolina Panthers, and they did seem to get the offense rolling in that game. Mike Evans caught, I think, 3 touchdown passes. So, I mean, if they can play like the old Bucs, I think they can win. I think the story, if the Cowboys win, is just the Cowboys are a good football team, and Tampa the whole season never got things in sync. That would just be the only thing. If Tampa's offense continues to struggle like it has all year, then they're going to be in trouble. I mean, the Bucs defense is playing good. They're going to have Vita Vea back, so the defense is probably going to be as close to healthy as it's been all season. So that is on the plus side for them. So they got that in the grass field, and the Cowboys. We'll see. We'll see. They are the favorites right now. They're just a slight favorite, and they're road favorites. So that's saying something. Again, the disparity in record, 12-5 versus 8-9. So we'll see what happens. These teams have gotten into the playoffs with losing records actually a couple of times. Actually 3 times beforehand since they've gone to this 4-division format. And 2 of the 3 teams actually won their first playoff game. The Seahawks did it back in 2010 when they went in with a 7-9 record and beat actually the defending champion New Orleans Saints, which was really the most impressive and most notable game. The Carolina Panthers won their division slightly under 500, about as close as you could get at 7-8-1. And they ended up beating the Cardinals, but the Cardinals were on their 3rd-string quarterback, so you can put an asterisk next to that. And then the only other team was actually, at that time, they were known as the Washington Football Team. They'd be Washington Commanders right now. They were also a 7-9 club, and but they actually lost their first playoff game, and oddly enough, it was to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are now on the other side with a losing record and hosting a playoff game. So, yeah, I think this is also one of the more interesting games, and it's Monday night, and we'll see how it all plays out. It's the whole wild card round, and then we'll get to the divisional round. The Chiefs and the Eagles will have the byes. The only team that have the byes now are the 1 seeds. So Andy Reid's current team and Andy Reid's old team will both have the byes. And we'll see what happens in the divisional round.